Moshe Safdie. I'm an architect. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I practice there architecture. We also have branch offices, which are basically field offices to execute the work. There's an office in Jerusalem, there's an office in Shanghai, there's an office in Singapore, and when we need it, we have an office in Toronto. Architecture is designing and constructing our living environment. It is conceiving first and realizing second where we live, our cities, our buildings, our houses. It's the process of creating shelter and the environment in a broader sense. I think a meaningful building is one that truly affects the quality of life, practically, operationally, and spiritually, that one has in one's environment. So what's a meaningful building? If you do a school, it should be an inspiring place for learning. It should be a wonderful place for teachers and students to interact. If you're doing a performing arts center, it should be a place that is fantastic to hear music and see performances, that functions in terms of acoustics and sightlines, but also celebrates the public life that goes on, the ritual of experiencing cultural performances in a community. It's a community building, and so on and so forth. So the role of the architect, I think, is to understand the essence of a program or the brief. As Khan used to say, what the building wants to be. And also to understand the tectonic imperatives. How do you build it? What materials? What building systems? How do you give them meaning, which means really what we say today is sustainability. How do you use energy and resources and materials to their utmost efficiency? And to me, another part of the agenda is how do you discover the essence of place? So a building, now that we are globalists, a building you build in China, or a building you build in Saudi Arabia, or one in Quebec City, all resonate with the culture, with the climate, with the history of the place in a meaningful way, so that they feel to the people who live there that they belong. Working in Asia at the intensity and scale that we do has been a paradigm shift for our practice, because much of our work in the United States and in Israel and elsewhere in recent years has been focused on institutions, on libraries, museums, airports. Here we're involved with the creation of urban place, mixed use mostly, extremely dense, working for the private sector, for developers, having to reconcile the market forces, the market demands, with the architectural environmental demands, which is no mean task. Habitat actually was born out of a series of events. The first event, which was a program set up by the Canadian government, was to send one student from every school of architecture in Canada to look at housing on the North American continent. And I had the good fortune to do so in 1959. And I discovered public housing, high-rise buildings that nobody wanted to live in, that were the center of violence and unhappiness. In the meantime, Le Corbusier was designing Unité d'Habitation in Marseille, which seemed to betray all the values that he had espoused in the 1920s and 30s. This was a big, large, compact building which had none of the qualities of house or village. And so I thought for my thesis I would try and reinvent the apartment building. And my motto was, for everyone a garden. I started that as a student, I developed it somewhat, and then when I had again the good fortune to be in charge of the master plan for the World's Fair, I had proposed my thesis as one of the major, or the major theme pavilion for the exhibition. And as luck sometimes strikes, the Canadian government approved the project and gave me the funding to build it. I think it's kind of a fairy tale that maybe would not have happened today. I think entrusting such a mega project to someone who never built a building, 25 years old, is not exactly the way the civil service operates today, but there it was, built as part of a World's Fair. On the other hand, as soon as it was built, and was extraordinary success in terms of public acceptance, people really said that's the kind of place we want to live, we found that reproducing it, replicating it, was not a simple matter. There was so much resistance to the building technology, to prefabrication, and even economically, it was not a simple thing to achieve for middle income and upper middle income housing. It's been the first time we've had a large-scale opportunity to explore housing of the type and with the approach of habitat on a new scale here. We did some research studies in our research fellowship about 6-7 years ago. How do we take the ideas of habitat forward to this period? Has the technology of building changed? We certainly found that the densities have changed. We found that mixed use is now commonplace, therefore housing is always mixed with other functions. These studies created a series of prototype typologies, theoretical. But we are now finding that we can apply these concepts to real projects. So in Singapore, in the Sky Habitat in Bishan, in Qingguangdao in China, major middle class, middle income housing project, in CHONGQING, a very large mixed-use complex, primarily residential. We are now realizing the concepts of habitat on a mass scale.